Hi everyone, this is Brian from Hobbyquest, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to put together our series of rotor models, which include the Batman, the Superquest, the Unlimited, and the Starfighter. Okay. Now, these models are all built very similarly. They use the same materials, they use the same techniques. So when you get a model like this, you just have to follow the same series of steps to get it done. And the first step, of course, is to build the shape of the model, which is really the only difference between all of our models. So we're just going to move these all aside, and we'll get started. Now, when you start, you're going to have a kit with a number of different materials. You may have the blueprint of the model, which will be rolled up in as you see here, and when it's rolled up like this, it can be hard to actually cut the model. So once your students each have one of these, just have them unroll it, roll it the other way, and that'll help flatten out our model so that you have something like this. And these are the materials you'll need for the first day. What you'll need is the blueprint. Each student should get one of these, and it should be flattened out on the table. They'll each need a pair of scissors, a glue stick, a piece of sandpaper, and a pencil or a marker just to make their marks when they're building it. Okay. Now, in your kit, you're going to have two different pieces of wood, and you can recognize them by how hard they are. But if you really can't tell, you can also tell because one of the sticks, you'll have fewer of one of them in this bundle here. This is your spruce wood. This piece of wood is harder, and we use this to build the actual rotor of our plane. So we don't actually use this for cutting. Okay. This wood here is our balsa wood. It's lighter. It's easier to cut. And usually you'll have a bigger bundle of this. So this is the wood that the students will be using to build the actual blueprint of their model. So we'll want to have this bundle of wood for the very first day. Once they have the blueprint and it's all flattened out, they're going to want to cut it out. And there should be a dotted line that goes around the entire model. And you'll just want to take your scissors and cut it right around the model. Now, for younger students, they may have some trouble cutting. It might take a bit longer to cut the actual paper, and sometimes they might actually cut it in a way where they cut into the paper or cut off parts of it. If that happens, you can just have them continue cutting, and at the very end, just have some tape available so they can just tape anything that was accidentally cut off. All right. And before moving on to the next step, you're going to want to have the students collect all their scrap paper and just throw it in the garbage so that they don't leave a mess. Okay. Now that we have our blueprint cut, you're going to look for the back side of the blueprint. And on the back side of it, you'll have a number of lines which will have numbers on them. And what those numbers are they're just steps for you to follow when you're building the model. It just helps organize your class so everybody's on the same page, working at the same pace. And usually it's numbered in a way where you start with the larger sticks and then you go smaller and smaller, so that if any of the students cut the sticks or break the sticks by accident, they'll still have some wood available for the smaller sticks later on. So we're going to start with number 1 and take our stick. Now, once you have your sticks set on your blueprint, you're going to want to just eyeball it and see how much of the stick you don't need. So if you have an extra bit left over, you're going to take your marker or your pencil, and we're just going to make a mark where we want to cut our stick so that it fits onto our blueprint. So I made a mark right there, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut it with scissors. And you can see you can actually cut it. This wood, it's softer balsa wood, so that should be available. Now after the stick is cut, you want to check one more time and see if the stick might just be a little bit off. Mine is a little bit off. So when that happens, what we want to do is we want to sand the edge of the stick down just a little bit so that it fits. And what you'll want to do is you want to take your sandpaper, just place it on the table, and just hold the stick like you would hold a pencil, and just scratch it on the sandpaper in order to sand it down. Okay. Now I'll check one more time, and it looks like it's good. So what I'll do next is I'm going to take my glue stick. I'm going to put a layer of glue stick on the stick itself, and I will paste it onto the blueprint. Just like that. Now that was number 1, so we're going to move on to number 2, and so on and so forth. So number 2 would look like this. I'd make a mark. Cut it. Sand it if necessary. And glue it in place. Just like that. And we do the same thing for number 3, number 4, 5, 6, however far the blueprint goes. When that's done, you're going to have something that looks like this. Okay? And if you look very carefully at this, you'll see that all of the sticks fit in place pretty well. We don't want to leave any large gaps between the sticks, because that will cause some problems when we try to use super glue to hold the entire model together. But you'll end up having something like this. This is usually where we end the first day of class. Typically all the cutting and the gluing and measuring is enough to fill up the entire session. But once this is done, you'll want to have your students, of course, write their names on them so that they'll be able to get them back for the next day. All right. So for the second session, when you get to the second part of this project, we'll hand these back out to students, and what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take some CA glue, some super glue, and you're going to want to apply the super glue to the little areas where the sticks meet. So all the adjoining parts on our model, we're going to want to place some super glue. This is going to hold the entire model together. And while you're doing this, and of course you're going to be doing this one at a time for every student, while you're doing this, you can just have your students color the model. You'll see that each of our designs has a special unique pattern on it, and the students can use some markers and just color in that design. To make this dry faster, we can of course use our accelerator and just hold it up about a foot away and spray down on the model. That'll help everything dry quickly. And once this is done, we can move on to the actual rotor. So at this point, while this is drying, you don't really need any more of this material. We'll still need the super glue for it a bit later, but you won't need anything else, so you can actually put everything away. And to build the rotor, what you'll need is the rotor parts, a rubber band, and the spruce wood, which I talked about earlier. This is the harder wood, which we use to make the rotor. All right, so each student should get one of these, one stick, one rubber band, and one set of rotor parts. And what we want to do with this is we'll want to take the rotor parts and put them onto the spruce wood stick. Sometimes you'll get a smaller rubber band inside one of these little packets, and you don't really want to use these rubber bands. You'll want to stick with the one that comes in your kit, because this is just a much better quality rubber band. Okay. So when you have all their parts together, you're going to show the students how to put the rotor together. We start by taking the parts of the rotor that attach to the spruce wood. That includes this little spinner with a little metal hook, the other hook, or the plastic hook that goes on the other side. And like all our models that have rubber bands, we want to make sure the hooks are on the same side of the stick. So if we have this oriented like this and you have the metal hook underneath, you're going to also want this plastic hook to also be facing the same way. So we put this together. Now on the spinner, you're going to have some openings where you can attach the rotor blades. And what you want to do is you'll want to put the rotor blades in, and there's a small little socket for you to connect the rotor blade. Just make sure that students are aware of that and they push the rotor blade into the little socket so that the rotor blade stays in place and doesn't fly out. All right, once this is done, you'll want to take your rubber band and you'll want to tie the ends of the rubber band together. So meet the ends of the rubber band together and just tie a knot so that the rubber band looks like this. Now, once this is done, we're going to hook the knot of the rubber band onto the end of the plane on the plastic hook. And we'll just want to attach the rubber band between the hooks, just wrap them around the hooks and make sure they stay in place. So you'll have something like this. Okay. Now, when this is done, at this point, all of your students should have their blueprint complete. It should be dry and ready to assemble with the rotor. Now, to do this, you're going to have to go around with some super glue and just place a line of super glue down the center stick, wherever that center part may be, and attach your rotor to the model. All right. Have your accelerator at hand and just give it a spray, and that should dry up pretty quickly, just like that. So like I mentioned earlier, we have many different models. So you might have the Starfighter, which looks like this, in which case you would put the rotor right down the middle. You might have the Unlimited, which looks like this, and actually has many variations in design. Or you might have the Superquest, which looks like this. All of this is built the same way. We use the sticks the same way and assemble it all in the same manner. The only difference is the shape of the model.